It's a delight to be with you today. In June 1935, Paramahansa Yogananda left New York aboard the ship the Europa. He and his party were headed to the British Isles and then on to Bavaria, for Yogananda wanted to make a special pilgrimage to Bavaria. This would be his only chance, he felt, to visit the great Catholic mystic, Therese Neumann. Several years earlier, Yogananda had become aware of the young Catholic girl, who was now in her mid-30s. She had many qualities similar to those he had seen in saints in India during his time growing up there. As always, whether in East or West, Yogananda was eager to meet a saint. He was filled with joy as their little party entered the quaint village where Therese lived. The Bavarian peasants exhibited a lively interest in the large Ford sedan that the pilgrims had brought with them all the way from America. The assorted group of its inhabitants intrigued them equally, with a young American man, a sophisticated elderly lady, and a dark-skinned Asian with his long hair tucked inside his coat collar. From the villagers' gestures, they were able to make their way to the little cottage where they understood Therese lived. It was charming, clean and neat, with geraniums blooming by a primitive well. But of Therese there was no sign. The neighbors, the passers-by, and even the village postman who came along could provide no information as to Therese's whereabouts. It started raining, and the day was slipping away. The others in the party suggested that they leave and find some lodging, but Yogananda was firm. "I will stay here until I find some clue leading to Therese," he declared. Well, 2 hours later, they were still sitting in the Ford amidst the dismal rain. "Lord," Yogananda sighed with a slight air of complaint, "why didst thou bring me here, if she has disappeared?" Then very shortly, an English-speaking man halted beside the car, politely offering his aid. "I don't know for sure where Therese is," he said, "but she often visits at the home of Professor Wirtz, a seminary master in Eichstätt, some 80 miles from here." So, as it turns out, Divine Mother was only having a little fun with her party of pilgrims. The next morning, the small group motored to the quiet village of Eichstätt, with its narrow streets lined with cobblestones. The said Dr. Wirtz greeted them cordially at his home. Yes, Therese is here." He then proceeded to send her word of the visitors. The messenger soon appeared with her reply. They are words that the devotees of Yogananda have heard and treasured many times. "Though the bishop has asked me to see no one without his permission, I will receive the man of God from India." Deeply touched at these words, Yogananda followed Dr. Wirtz upstairs to a sitting room. Therese entered immediately, radiating an aura of peace and of joy. She wore a black gown with a spotless white headdress. Although her age was 37 at this time, she appeared much younger, possessing indeed a childlike freshness and charm. Healthy, well-formed, rosy-cheeked, and cheerful, this is the saint that does not eat? Therese greeted Yogananda with a very gentle handshake. They both beamed in silent communion, each knowing the other to be a true lover of God. Dr. Wirtz offered to translate as they seated themselves, looking forward to an exchange with each other. "Don't you eat anything?" Yogananda wanted to hear the answer from her own lips. "No, except a consecrated rice flour wafer once every morning at 6 o'clock. "And how large is that wafer?" "Oh, it is paper thin, the size of a small coin. I take it for sacramental reasons. If it is not consecrated, I am unable to swallow it." "Well, certainly you could not have lived on that for 12 whole years." "I live by God's light." How simple her reply. How yogic a reply it was. "I see you realize that energy flows to your body from the ether, the sun, the air." A swift smile broke over her face. "I am so happy to know that you understand how I live." "Your sacred life is a daily demonstration of the truth uttered by Christ," Yogananda said. "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God." And again she showed joy at the Master's explanation. "It is so. Indeed, it is so. One of the reasons I am here on earth today is to prove that man can live by God's invisible light, and not by food only." "And can you teach others how to live without food?" Therese appeared a trifle shocked. "Oh, I cannot do that. God does not wish it." Yogananda then gazed down at her hands, and Therese showed him a little square, freshly healed wound on each of her palms. And on the back of each hand, she pointed out a smaller, crescent-shaped wound, freshly healed. Each wound went straight through the hand. The saint told Master something of her weekly trances. As a helpless onlooker, I just observed the whole passion of Christ. Yogananda learned that each week, from Thursday midnight until Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock, her wounds would open and bleed. Each week, she would lose 10 pounds from her ordinary 121-pound weight. Suffering intensely in her sympathetic love, Therese yet looked forward joyously to these weekly visions of her Lord. Yogananda realized at once that her strange life was intended by God to reassure all Christians of the historical authenticity of Jesus' life and crucifixion as it was recorded in the New Testament, and to dramatically display the ever-living bond between the Galilean Master and his devotees. The professor added some interesting physiological details. And because she eats nothing but the wafer, taking no other food, her stomach has shrunk. She has no excretions, but her perspiration glands do function, and her skin is always soft and firm. At the time of the parting, Yogananda expressed to Therese his desire to be present at her next trance. "Yes, please come next Friday," she said graciously. "The bishop will give you a permit. I am very happy that you sought me out here in Eichstatt." There was no fee involved, that the permit rule was made by the church and protected Therese from the onrush of casual tourists who in previous years had flocked to her little cottage by the thousands. Therese shook hands with the Master gently many times and walked with the little party to the gate. They turned on the automobile radio for her, and the saint examined it with little enthusiastic chuckles. As a large crowd gathered, Therese retreated back into the house. She went to a window then, where she peered out at the master childlike, waving her hand goodbye to them. The following Friday, when Yogananda observed her going through her vision of Jesus suffering, as he was caught up in an ecstatic state and joined her in observing the crucifixion. Yogananda learned that Therese slept only 1 or 2 hours at night. In spite of the many wounds in her body and the little sleep, she was active and full of energy. She loved birds, took care of an aquarium of fish, and worked often in her garden. Her correspondence was very large, as Catholic devotees from around the world wrote her for prayers and healing blessings. Many seekers were cured through her of serious diseases. Therese had the power through prayer of working out on her own body the ailments of others. The saint's abstinence from food dated from a time when she prayed that the throat disease of a young man of her parish, then preparing to enter holy orders, be transferred to her own throat, and thus she was unable to eat. Yogananda later revealed that Therese had been living in the time of Christ. She was the one disciple who had stayed faithful through all of Jesus' trials at the end of his life, Mary Magdalene. Thus, Therese was granted the ability to receive the visions of Jesus' crucifixion. Yogananda said she had lived in ecstasy of God for all the years since she stopped eating. In both these lifetimes, that great soul exhibited her love and her compassion. And as Therese, she was able to assume the loving maternal role of healing and taking on the karma of others. God bless you.